All right, guys, welcome back to RTW'S Wild History Ride. I'm Thomas.
I'm Will.
I'm Rhonda.
And today's episode, we are going to be discussing something that we have been requested to discuss by several friends. We are going to talk about the late Diana, Princess of Wales, and some of the events in her life, as well as the tragic accident that claimed her life. We are also going to be discussing conspiracies regarding the accident. So, as a preface to what we're going to discuss, I would like to mention that we're going to get to a point where we're not talking about facts. We are talking about unsubstantiated opinions.
Mm-hmm. And theories.
Yes. They are conspiracies, things that have not been proven true. They are just opinions by people outside of the immediate event. As well, we also wanted to mention that as we were discussing Diana's life, there were opinions expressed about her relationship with the late Prince Philip, who sadly passed yesterday. And again, as these two individuals are not alive to defend themselves or discuss this, I would like to state that some of the things we're going to discuss are opinions. They are not facts.
Not fact. Do not take anything we say with everything is
aside
true.
from dates of events.
Yes.
I mean, there are things that are fact-based because you can look at multiple sources and find that they are facts. But when you're talking about people's feelings on their relationship or events that happened that there's no proof for, it is an opinion.
Which
it
you
is
think
not
about.
a fact. Yes.
You think about that with Diana, everyone had such a emotional response to her, especially back in the 90s and stuff. I know, Rhonda, you knew, I'm sure you had an experience with Diana, and you thought you were...
She was a year older than you?
Right, yeah, a year older than me. And she was always in the news. It was always on the cover of magazines. It was constantly in the news, which I'm sure that, obviously that led to a lot of things.
Yes, as it does, I'm sure, with a lot of celebrities and stuff nowadays too, because they're people too. So just in relationship to what we're talking about today, just realize that people are people and they have feelings, and I'm sure that
And no one's perfect. Nothing in life is no one is going to do everything right to satisfy you, and your relationships with people are not always going to be just highs. There's going to be low moments. There's going to be things that you can misinterpret, even between two individuals. Like, if I say something to my dad or my dad says something to me, we could have different opinions on what that meant.
Yep. That's just life and normal. But I guess, before we also say it too, I want to give a little shout out to some people in Atlanta, Georgia. I know my brother Bo and my cousin Mike, they've been listening to the podcast, and they said they've been loving it, so I'm excited.
We actually have several people that have mentioned that in the past week, that they've enjoyed it. I have a friend from church who mentioned it. I'm not going to list names just because I don't want people to be bothered by that. It's not...
Mike and Bo are pretty common in the South, so
Yeah. So I'm not going to list names, but we have several friends. Y'all know who you are because I talk to you regularly, and we are so grateful for everyone listening to us.
Me too.
And all the downloads. It's wonderful.
As of this week, we are over 100 downloads.
That's so crazy.
Decently over 100 downloads, and it's because people are sharing. It's because people are letting the word out, and we appreciate that so much.
I just, it just goes to show, I got to preface this with also saying that I've been actually talking to people. I talked to Brent Praywat and Ashley Flowers, which I don't know. I'm saying it's them because I think it's cooler. But I've been emailing kind of back and forth with them about, things about the podcast, and they've been responding to me.
Yeah.
And so thank you to them for kind of giving us some tips as well.
And we'd also like to add... check out our Twitter and our Instagram.
Oh, yeah. We'll link those in the description.
Yeah, the Instagram is RTW'S Wild History Ride. And our Twitter is, I believe, RTW'S Wild.
I think that's right. I think
so.
That's right.
We do not have a way for people to comment on our actual podcast. So it'd be great if you went to our Twitter page or our Instagram and commented on our...
our posts and everything. Yeah. And if you have any questions or anything you want to recommend.
And if you're enjoying us, please share.
Yeah, comment.
Tell all your friends. Get the word out, because we enjoy doing this. And if you enjoy us doing this,
let's go.
We'd like to spread it to more people.
That's right. We'd like to continue.
We would. But all right, so I guess getting past all that, who wants to start here?
Let's get into it. I
Okay.
believe that's you.
I'll take the lead on this as far as the beginnings of Diana Spencer. She was born July 1st, 1961. At that point, she was known as the Honorable Diana Frances Spencer. Her grandfather was the 7th Earl Spencer. So since her father didn't really have a title, I guess you could say, she really didn't have a title other than Honorable. She and her family lived at Park House at Sandringham until 1975. Now, that's near the royal family's Sandringham estate, and Park House was actually leased from Queen Elizabeth II. So the family obviously knew each other. Both Diana's grandmothers had served as ladies-in-waiting to Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. Now, the family moves to Althorpe, which is the family home, when her grandfather passed away and her father inherited the title. He was the 8th Earl Spencer. At that point, she becomes Lady Diana Spencer. Now, she, as far as school, what she did, when she was very young, I wouldn't say she was, I guess, an average student, but she definitely loved dance and music. And when she finished school, she went on to work as a nanny for an American couple, and she also worked as a kindergarten teaching assistant. Now, Charles meets Diana in November 1977 at Althorpe at the Spencer family home. She's 16, he's 28, and he happens to be dating Diana's sister, Sarah, at the time.
That's what I thought. I thought there was some other connection there. So.
Right, they did meet. I mean, obviously, they knew about each other.
Yeah.
Obviously, he was
Yeah.
the Prince of Wales. Everybody knew who the Prince of Wales was.
Yes.
And I'm sure he knew about her just because of the connection with the family. I mean,
Yeah.
the close proximity of where they lived, the relationship with the grandmothers. So he was aware of her.
And I think it's interesting to say too, like I kind of just think of the royals in relation like to Princess Diana, like just knowing them from then. I'm sure that they were just as equally as well known, or even more so, probably back in the day before Princess Diana too. So it's interesting to hear. I think because I just kind of think of it from that perspective. From
Starting at that point.
Starting at that point,
Right. Okay, November 1978, she is invited to a dance at Buckingham Palace to celebrate Charles' 30th birthday. July, and I'm just doing just a time frame here. July 1980, she and Diana Diana and Charles meet at a house party, and that's when Charles begins to take notice of Diana. By September of 1980, the paparazzi begins to notice that there's some interest here between the two. And this is when there's a famous photo taken of Diana outside of the kindergarten where she works. One of the paparazzi had asked her to pose, and I'll get back to this picture here shortly whenever I wrap up my segment. So just keep that in mind. She poses for a picture that's going to be become quite famous. November of 1980, she visits the family at Balmoral. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip approve of Diana. At this point, they're beginning to think of her as a possible wife for Charles, if not prior. And so she gets the royal approval from Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. February 6th, 1981, Charles proposes. And February 24th, 1981, the engagement is announced. Now, during the interview, the interviewer asked Diana if they're in love, and she says, of course. Charles adds whatever in love means. So I'm going to mention that too as I wrap this up. Mid-July 1981, Diana finds a bracelet that Charles had planned to give to Camilla Parker Bowles. And even though she's having misgivings, and possibly he is also, I assume this was a going away gift, or I'm getting married, I'm starting a new life from Charles to Camilla. That's my assumption. And even though Diana has some misgivings about it, she, obviously goes on to get married, and they're married July 29th, 1981. Diana at this time is 20. Charles is 32.
Well, she was like, and it's weird too. I don't know if you found this in your research or anything. I wonder how she knew it was for Camilla. It had CF. I see.
GF, which someone had told her that their pet names for each other, and I can't remember what the G stood for, but Fred, and she thought it was either Girl Friday to his Girl Friday, or again, I'm sorry, I didn't keep the.
Well, that's what I didn't know if
he
you
had
did.
for her, but his pet name was Fred, and so she thinks it could be either of those.
Okay.
So somehow she had figured that out, and I don't have that in my research as to how she knew that, but she knew that it was for Camilla.
I feel like women always kind of know.
Yeah,
in
there's
that
always that
situation.
You do have that
suspicion.
feeling.
Yeah.
Well, and let me just go back to this. Obviously, during the comment or during the interview, Charles's comment about
Love.
whatever in love means. I imagine women everywhere.
Oh,
There was
oh
an
my
audible
goodness.
gasp.
Oh,
whenever
from
he said
me
that.
too. I'm like, that's just
Yeah,
cold,
that's,
man.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And maybe, this is back early 80s. Maybe men just didn't share their feelings as much as they do these days. But that is pretty cold. I mean, why he didn't just jump in and say, yeah, absolutely,
course,
we're in love. She's the best thing ever. And looking forward to this marriage and it's going to work. Yada, yada, yada. It could have been so different.
Yes,
And,
yes.
that definitely, you would think maybe a red flag. I mean, we know she had some misgivings and maybe that's part of it. And then back to the photo I had mentioned, and I don't know who out there might recall this, but when the photo was taken, she was kind of backlit from the sun, so you could see through her skirt,
Oh.
and you could see her legs. I mean, it wasn't anything terrible, but you could see her legs, which again, this is the early 80s.
That's
and
scandalous.
Somewhat. And this is what I was thinking as I was doing my research. Okay, so most women back then would have been wearing a slip, a half slip, something, because obviously this skirt was not lined. So you would see through it.
Yes.
And being backlit like this, that became an iconic photo of Diana that just went,
Viral. I guess before viral was a thing. Yeah.
And it just makes me wonder, okay, most women would have had a slip on. Is this the indication of someone who's just not wrapped up in convention and tradition? Mm-hmm. Maybe this was kind of I wouldn't say a red flag, but
A precursor.
Yeah, a precursor of what's to come.
Yes.
That just wasn't maybe important to her.
Yes.
And she had no problems with flouting convention, if you will.
Well, she definitely did.
I think of, I know I came across some things on Twitter just in preparation for this podcast, and it was like, the revenge dress of Princess Diana, and it was like her in that black dress, and it was like very scandalous, I guess, for the time.
Oh, was that the Travolta dress?
No, I don't think so. I
I'm
think
not
that
sure.
was-
I think they were married when she danced with Travolta.
Yeah, I think they were. No, that one's probably her first public engagement with after the engagement's announced. The first time she and Charles go out in a public.
Oh,
engagement.
yeah, it might have been that.
I think
actually.
that was
It might
it. I
have
think
been,
that's
actually.
if that's the black dress that I'm thinking of. But anyway, bottom line, I would say this photo is the start of what became what made Diana the most photographed woman in the world.
Yes.
Okay, well, Thomas, do you want
All
to take
right.
it from there?
It'll go to me now. So I'm going to discuss a little bit of their married life and the build up to their divorce. And so we start off, as you said, they were married in 81.
Right.
By 82, she gave birth to William. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of people can probably guess that marrying into the royal family, something so prestigious and controlled,
Yes.
can lead to some emotional and mental issues. Now, when she was pregnant with William, very early stages of pregnancy, she reached a point of depression where she felt insignificant. She even stated in an interview that she felt like nothing. And she threw herself down a flight of stairs. And no, she wasn't hurt. Obviously, Prince William survived a term. There was no injury. But she, a few years later, she gave birth to Harry. Now, during the pregnancy of Harry, she describes her relationship with Charles as the best it was. That was the closest they ever were, was when she was pregnant with their second child. And he was born in 84. Now, when it came to the children, she was not like the other royals. She made the decisions herself. She dismissed the first nanny that the family picked for her and picked her own nanny. And then when it came to their school, she picked their school. She picked pretty much everything about them. She picked their clothing. She chose their first names. She was given a list of names to choose from, and she picked her own.
Good.
So, and then whenever she had the time, she would take them to school. She planned all of her daily duties around their schedule.
Oh, bless her.
So she was very much involved in her children's
Very
life.
hands-on.
Yeah, and she wasn't going to let anyone else tell her how to do things. Which, again, you could say that might have been a problem, but that also might be something great for the children to have experienced, that their mother wasn't going to bow down to anyone.
Well, and I feel like they probably don't experience that much anymore.
Yeah.
Probably don't have. Well, I guess with Harry and everything. But the thing is, it's so structured. They're adults now. They're in it.
Yeah. And after only 5 years of marriage, her and Charles had reached a point where it was definitely over. It was pretty much over. Charles had restarted his relationship with Camilla, and after 5 years of marriage, Diana had reached a point where she'd also started an affair with a man. I believe his name was James Hewitt. Mm-hmm. And now there's all these conspiracies that Hewitt is the biological father of Harry because Harry doesn't look that much like William to some people. To me, they can pass for brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, my brother and I don't look that much alike, but
Yeah, I feel like they
there's
look
enough.
alike.
There's enough.
Yeah, I feel like they look
But now Hewitt says that his relationship with Diana didn't start till 2 years after Harry had already been born. Mm-hmm. So again,
hearsay.
Again, people trying to throw their own opinions into things and make things
more than what they are. You know.
So after just a few more years, I believe in '92 they were officially separated, and there were rumors that she was involved with multiple men during the marriage, and there's just no evidence to back it up. Because, again, everyone's going to give their opinion. Everyone's going to say what they want to say. We know that she was having an affair, but so was Charles. And they were both pretty much convinced that it was over.
Yeah.
They were just together for appearances' sake.
Living separate lives.
Yes. And the Queen and Prince Philip, at the time, of course, were trying to be involved and trying to talk to them. And I had it was actually very sweet, and I wish I had copied it down, but Prince Philip had actually written a letter to Diana. Now, some of you don't know, or some of you do. There are claims that Philip was always rough and mean and bitter to Diana, but that's taken from an outsider's perspective.
Yes.
Because Prince Philip was a military man's man. And whenever I would watch Prince Philip talk, it always made me think of my dad.
Yeah, I was going to say,
so
you could
very brutally blunt.
Yeah.
It's not intended to be offensive, but he's not going to beat around the bush and play games with you. He's going to tell you what he thinks. So in this letter that I read, it was before they'd officially separated. He says that he's talking about how you've both made choices I don't agree with, and despite my attempts, I know I am a terrible... he didn't word it as mediator, but it was implying that he's terrible at trying to help spouses work through their stuff. And she responded with, "Dear Pa, I believe you are understating your capabilities in that regard.
She called him Pa.
It is just
That is
at this point that we have both decided that it's...
Well, and they're consenting adults, and, things just happen.
So they had a close relationship, is what we're thinking.
Well,
For her to make that dear Pa.
Well, you're a fan of the show The Crown.
Yeah.
And there's a scene where she goes hunting with Philip. And that's very likely that happened, or something along those lines, because, as you said, she went and visited Balmoral. And when you go to something like that, it's a weekend to meet the family.
Right.
It's like what we do here in the South.
Yep.
You meet the family.
Meet
you
the
get to know
in-laws.
them.
That's right.
And so
Future in-laws.
If
they didn't like her to some degree, they would have put an end to it fast. And from the sound of it, the Queen and Prince Philip did their best to keep them reconciled. It's just, like I said, you have a family that is so controlled and so... I'm not going to say rigid, but
maybe traditional. Yeah.
Traditional. It's very traditional. That's all it is, the English monarchy.
That they can't always act the way they want to. So they do the best they can of showing what they think and what they feel, but it can be misinterpreted as cold.
Yeah.
It would be so easy to misinterpret the relationships of the royals as cold.
Yes.
Because, again, we're outsiders looking in. And...
I feel like English people probably, and no offense to English people if there are any that ever listen, but I just feel like, they're not probably as emotional and evocative.
It's their culture.
Yeah.
And so then we come... Oh,
Well, you've heard of the phrase stiff upper lip?
yes.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
That's it.
Now we come forward to 95, where Diana does an interview, and I believe the interviewer's name, if I can pull it up, Martin Bashir. Mm-hmm. It was on a BBC current affairs show called Panorama, where she discussed her depression, bulimia, and her self-harm, where she said that she multiple times injured her arms and legs. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Now, we don't know if that was something she had before, because she was so very young when she got married, and a lot of mental health things don't present themselves until later 20s.
Well, also too, like postpartum.
Yes,
postpartum
she suffered postpartum after William.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, when it comes to depression and things like that, it could have been either people around her, family, or her own opinion of the situation.
Yeah.
So we don't know. We can say all this,
We
but
can't
nobody will
speculate
know.
on that. Yeah.
It could have been she put such a high standard on herself while also wanting to break tradition that she caused it, or it could have been people who weren't the royal family were telling her things, and it just...
Well, she's stuck in between this rock and a hard place. It's
Exactly.
like, well, you have to be traditional, but you're the princess
But
of
you
the
wanna
people,
be
and
free,
you want to be free,
yes.
and the American people are making her stand for things,
Yes, But either way, the interview is considered the final straw, where at that time, the Queen and Prince Philip sent letters, which again seems cold, but they sent letters back and forth as a form of communication. It was also a propriety thing. Mm-hmm. So they sent letters to both Charles and Diana saying, it's time.
Yep.
Divorce.
Yep.
And so during that, Diana was also accusing Charles's personal assistant. I believe her name was... It's not Leggy, it's Teggy something.
Teggy? I like that.
Hold on a second. I will pull it up really fast.
Teggy Leggy, that's what I'm going to call her.
It was Tiggy Leg Burke.
Oh, okay.
She was his personal assistant. Now, Diana, again, we all know that Camilla and Charles kind of had an on-again, off-again thing regularly.
The National Enquirer always said that.
And,
I remember that.
So there were accusations that he was sleeping with Tiggy, and as they're finalizing their divorce, Diana made the accusation that Tiggy had aborted Charles's child.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
But she also made claims that Tiggy was plotting to have her murdered, and just extreme stuff.
Oh, Diana said that?
Diana made claims about that, but that's again coming from her biographers.
Yeah.
So...
And that's also coming from a woman, too, that if it was, not saying it was true, but also struggling with mental health and stuff.
And so they finally reached agreements. They agreed on the terms of the divorce, and I'm not going to go into it.
Nah.
But basically, she got kind of like a severance kind of thing. She got money from it. She got she kept their apartment, things like that.
Yeah.
And there are claims that her brother wouldn't let her move back into the family home, so Charles gave her the apartment. And then we go into her title. Now, she kept the title Diana, Princess of Wales, because she was the mother of the heir.
Right.
So,
future king.
So even though she's no longer married to Charles, she is the mother of someone believed to be the future king.
Yes.
Because, honestly, at the point we're going, I think it's going to be George's crown before it's William's. But,
Yeah.
I honestly think Elizabeth's going to outlive us all. But
Camilla's going to come, y'all. I'm telling you, Camilla.
But she lost the title, Her Royal Highness. Mm-hmm. Now, there's claims that the Queen wanted her to keep it as a respect and a sign of we care kind of thing.
Well,
Yes.
Again, the mother of a future king.
Yes. But Charles, not really demanded, but he insisted that the title be removed.
Yes.
So it was Charles's decision that she was no longer Her Royal Highness. Now, this will again show the relationship between Diana and Philip.
Yeah.
There are claims that there was a conversation between the two of them a year before the divorce where Philip is quoted as saying, "If you don't behave, my girl, we'll take your title away." Ew. And she said in response to him, "My title is a lot older than yours, Philip."
Wow. Oh, wow.
So, but see, you might think...
That's pretty funny.
You might think that's shots fired kind of thing.
Yeah.
To me, that's like the relationship between a father and daughter.
Maybe what we call witty banter.
Yeah.
I feel like they were like eating toast and jam, like when they said that.
I feel like I feel like Prince Philip was a very, very jovial person, but it was again mixed with that brutal honesty kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where, okay, if you're again outside looking in, you think, oh my God, he's so mean, but then you're like, he's playing with her.
And
he's just playing with her.
And also,
he's trying to make light of a crappy situation.
We only see what the media wants us to see. Yeah, the media always has some kind of agenda.
By this point, he's known Diana for 14 plus years.
They have a rapport, no matter what.
Exactly. They have a relationship, regardless.
Yep.
And even if... And he knows his son made mistakes. He knows she made mistakes. And we're at a point where, yes, you're going to love your child no matter what, but you can't blame one person for the situation when both people are in fault for it.
I mean, no offense, they're miserable.
And
they sound like they're miserable.
Again, Diana is the mother of his grandsons.
Yeah.
So he's going to care about her regardless.
Yeah.
So now we're getting to the point of the accident.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go too much into the detail of it, but I am going to really fast discuss some of the things she's well known for.
Yeah.
Her charity work and her care for everyone. She is one of the first people photographed hugging an AIDS patient.
I do remember that.
She wanted to get rid of the stigma of physical contact with HIV positive and AIDS patients because, again, we know that it's transferred through bodily fluids.
Yeah.
Not through touch.
Yep.
Not through being around them talking. It's through bodily fluids. She also was very heavily involved in... sorry, I was on the wrong page. She was involved in Landmine Cleanup because a lot of times when you have wars and battles and things, there's waste.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't always get everything. Not everything's cleaned up from war zones. So she was very involved in helping with that and also identifying and the safety of being around those areas.
Yeah. Yep.
And I believe there's even a photo of her in a flak jacket and a helmet touring one of the sites that they were cleaning up.
Yes, I recall that.
So she was very, very involved in the people's lives.
Right.
Because my thought process on it would be, this is the world my kids are going to grow up in. I want to make sure it and the people that are sharing it with them are safe as possible.
Yeah. Yep.
But so now we go to the death of
Yes.
Princess Diana. She was in a car accident on August 31st, 1997, in the Pont de l'Alma tunnel in Paris while the driver was fleeing paparazzi.
Yes.
Which is why England has some of the strictest paparazzi laws. Which, understandable, because if someone so beloved dies from trying to get away from paparazzi, you gotta kind of change some rules.
Well,
and even to this day, Prince William and Prince Harry do not have the fondest relationship with journalists.
Oh, of course.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him at all.
There's even paparazzi pictures of Kate on their honeymoon.
Yes.
And he had to actually file claims against the journalists.
I remember that.
Harry even he was leaving somewhere and has punched out a journalist for getting in his face, and that's understandable. I mean, I would hold a big grudge against anyone who thought, okay, it's fine to chase people down the street.
Yeah.
That's just
well, my thing is, I'm
wrong.
all for, I can understand a paparazzi, needing to feed their family and everything. I completely understand that. But there's a way and some way to, get a picture of somebody, not harassing them, not doing,
Yes.
But, I mean, granted, when you have a whole bunch of people, one person, it's a mob mentality, people fighting to try to get that good picture.
Yes.
Trying to get the money. It's just, it's very, just greedy and just a lot.
Yes.
It's a lot of that, which I'm completely fine with people trying to pay their mortgage off and feed their families. I'm good with that.
But
when
also
it comes
keep
to,
that human element.
Yes,
Yeah.
when it's harassing and
Yes.
just this just terrible harassment that makes people have to flee away in their limo, or whatever,
Yes.
that's just complete, or whatever,
Or-
it's just crazy.
Or fight their way through a crowd
Yes.
of paparazzi.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I wouldn't handle it well. I'd probably fight.
well, yeah,
But,
and that's the thing.
The accident also claimed the life of her companion, the man she was involved with, Dodi Fayed.
Yep.
As well as the driver, Henri Paul. The survivor was Diana's bodyguard, Trevor Rees-Jones.
Yep.
But Diana passed away. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Will.
Mm-hmm.
But first, I do want to do one final disclaimer, because we have spent over an hour trying to do our prep work, when usually, right before we record, we take maybe 10 minutes
It's
to get
10 minutes,
our
whatever.
headspace right.
Swishing some water.
And so I wanted to make the comment that we are very Southern, and some of the words and names that are going to be pronounced are French.
Very French.
And, a little bit difficult for the Southern twang. So I apologize for us behaving like children over this next segment.
Well,
because
what he's really trying to say is that I will pronounce every single one of these words correctly, and that everything will just come off very eloquent.
I do also need to add
That is a lofty goal.
Yes, that's the goal of this podcast.
I need to add that while we were rehearsing, I was making it worse because every time he'd say a name,
Stop!
I would. If he was saying it wrong, I would correct him. But if he was saying it was a word I didn't understand, I would mess with him by saying a false word and claiming that was the right way to pronounce it.
I can say.
And Will does not speak other languages.
No. I spoke Spanish for a little while.
I'm conversant in Spanish, and I can understand. I can understand French and a very, very little bit of Korean now. But Will is not very experienced with other languages. So let's get into it.
Well, let's get into it, I suppose. I will say, so I'll preface it. I was going to start with like the conspiracies, and like we said, this is nothing that is to taken for 100% fact. It's a lot of hearsay.
It's all opinions.
It's all opinions. So Princess Diana is not alive to tell her side of the story and what she was feeling at this time and what was going on and what were the circumstances why she was here. So, I mean, you got to realize, like, especially now, we have such a stigma on mental health, and I think it's getting better. Mental health is very important, and people struggle with that. So just know that whatever she did or whatever someone else did, that was between two consenting adults and what she was, whatever.
Yes.
So always know that whatever, was going on in her head, she only knows what was going on in her head at the time, and maybe like very close friends. But I will say, so like Thomas said, the date of the crash was on August 31st of 1997. And so I remember, and Rhonda, I know that you might know this guy. His name is Richard Shepherd, and he's a top UK pathologist who was asked to review Diana's autopsy whenever she was when the crash first happened in the tunnel. So it was said that Shepherd describes the injury and the location of the injury as something he's never seen in his decades as a pathologist, and it explains why initially when she was at the scene and they were extracting her from the car, that she was conversant and she was talking and all that. Well, suddenly, all of a sudden, she just kind of goes unresponsive, and they have to do like CPR on her to get her back in order to stabilize her. And I'll get into the timeline a little bit later as well. But it's just like, they have to make a couple stops at like this railway station and stabilize her again because her blood pressure drops and all this kind of stuff. It was just a lot happening at the time. But it ended up, it says, in the ambulance, she gradually lost consciousness and she suffered a cardiac arrest. Every effort was made to resuscitate her, and in the hospital, she went into surgery. They did identify the problem and attempted to repair apparently a vein that had ruptured. And this is coming. I am a nurse. I'm a surgical ICU nurse at in my local town and everything. And so I will just say, just as a layman's terms type of thing, you have your arteries and you have your veins. Arteries carry your very high pressure oxygenated blood to your systemic circulation in your body. That's where you measure your blood pressure, like on your arm. That's what you think of when you go to the doctor's office. Veins are what we stick to get lab work on people, and they're basically carrying your deoxygenated blood. It's a lot. It's less oxygenated, it's less pressure. So if you like ruptured a vein or like tore your vein or we stick it, it's a very slow trickle of blood. If you have an artery rupture or something like that, or you're some kind of abdominal aortic aneurysm that ruptures or something like that, you will lose blood so copiously because it's in such a big vessel.
Okay, well, let me ask. So if you bruise yourself, your arm, your leg, whatever, is that typically a vein?
That's typically like injury at a site, like tissue injury at a site, like you said, with veins and everything like that too, which can bruise, and you can kind of, which I don't think staging bruising, it is kind of a thing. I think it's less, important. Now, you know how a vein, it'll be like very purple and deep, and then it'll kind of get lighter, stuff like that, like with the bruises and everything like that. But yes, like that is typically, I think that's what I think of. If you had some kind of artery, just some kind of something that happened to an artery, like we have patients sometimes that have things in their legs, like they'll have some kind of popliteal occlusion or something. Their leg will get stark white and all this kind of stuff. So she had ruptured a vein, which is a very slow amount of blood loss. But apparently, let's see, they ended up trying to resuscitate her where she made it into surgery. They did identify the problem and attempt to repair it, but sadly it was too late. Like at that point, it kind of where she was. It was kind of rare, the injury that she had. It was said that if she had just maybe not sustained injuries to that site or that vital vein where she was, that she could have maybe walked away from this crash and ended up like in a maybe out of the hospital in a couple days with maybe a black eye, some fractured ribs, and a broken arm.
Wow.
That's what it said. But just unfortunately, that's just what happens with trauma sometimes. It's just crazy. They might be fine for a second and then they're not the next. So that was kind of the preface of saying how she died and what ended up happening to her.
Yes.
So the first one I'm going to talk about is some kind of reports made by Richard Tomlinson, who was a former agent of MI6 that kind of complained of an unfair dismissal in 1995. And he attempted, Dodi Fayed that we were talking about, he attempted to help his father around that time kind of say, that there was a whole bunch of conspiracies surrounding the deaths of Diana and Dodi at the time. So that's what he was from. But he was actually imprisoned under the Official Secrets Act of 1989 because he actually did try to sell his secrets from MI6, like his story with MI6, to maybe an Australian publisher. So that's why he is in jail. I don't know if he's still in jail or anything like that, but he was, I think, had in jail at that time for those.
To me, you might say that him being put in jail leads credentials to the conspiracy, but to me that actually does the opposite because he believes he was unfairly let go in 95. He's going to do everything he can to make MI5 and everybody else look bad.
And that's the thing, and you got to take that with anything people say. I always say that somebody who is being paid by maybe somebody who is on some kind of, you're being paid by somebody, you're probably going to look into, not saying everybody's like that, but just you're probably going to look at things in a little bit more favorably towards a certain side.
Yes,
is what I'm saying.
Exactly.
So sources close to the investigation into all of this said that Tomlinson claimed that Diana's driver, Henri Paul, who also died in the crash with her, was working for UK intelligence. Now, Henri Paul did die in the crash, and originally there were some, they were looking into him. Apparently, there were some kind of investigation into him for being a drunk and being he was the driver that night. They thought that he might have had too much to drink. Yes. And it was said that he ended up...
See, that's the story I was always told, that he'd had a little too much to drink. Now, there was no claims that he was belligerently drunk. Yeah. They were always implying that he was maybe just a little bit buzzed. Yes. Anything that could have hampered his responses. Because that whenever you're even just a tiny bit buzzed, your reaction speed dampens.
It's dampened and stuff. So, and some people are just a lot better at, and I don't really know his size or anything like that. I need to probably know, the bigger you are, the harder you fall, I'm going to say. But the bigger you are, the more it takes for you to get more drunk and Yeah. So that was what one of the reports ended up saying too. It said that his alcohol blood level was supposedly 3 times the French legal limit, which I had to look up because I was I know it's not going to be our limit.
Yeah, because... If he was 3 times our limit, would be
that's a lot.
24% of his blood would have been alcohol.
And granted, here's the thing: I'm not a genius in any type of. I don't claim to be, but I will say it would kill him. Yeah. I guess the word wouldn't be pickled. I always just say pickled, for things like that.
But so we know that the number is significantly lower for the French blood alcohol content.
Yes. And so France, I looked it up, it is, you are allowed a maximum of 0.5 milligrams per milliliter of alcohol per liter in your blood compared to a 0.8 in the UK, is what it says. So they're a little bit more strict. So, if they're saying he was 3 times that legal limit, that was just one of the things that they were saying about the investigation. So... There was apparently a British pathologist that was hired by Al Fayed, the father of Dodi, and everything, Mohammed Al Fayed, that said that they wanted to, say that wasn't true. It was challenged by them, and they said that they wanted to carry out a third test, and they did the vitreous humor of his eye, which it did apparently confirm that he was drunk, is what it said. So it says French authorities carried out a third test, this time using the more medically conclusive vitreous fluid from inside the eye, which confirmed that the level of alcohol measured was kind of the same, and then also that he was on antidepressants, is what it said as well. So if you think of it, you never want to combine your antidepressant medication, and
Another depressant.
yes, and that's not saying anything like, don't drive drunk is what this whole thing is, but also, I'm not blaming any of the victims. Like, it's tragic that anything this happened to anyone.
In my opinion, regardless of his state in the situation, it is the fault of the paparazzi.
Yeah,
to me,
it was
because you are chasing someone down. Regardless, they are trying to get away. They are trying to get to safety.
Yeah.
So even if he was in a state he shouldn't have been operating a vehicle, in my opinion, the fault lies with the paparazzi. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he didn't make the situation any better, but the fault isn't just on him.
So going to Henri Paul and stuff like that, they're saying that theorists have alleged that the driver of the Mercedes-Benz, which was him, was in the pay of the National Security Service. And I think that it's just under the impressions that he was part of the conspiracy, but he tragically, was taken too. So.
And if you're going to be part of a conspiracy, you're going to do something to keep yourself from dying.
No, and that's so
more than likely.
More than likely is what they're saying. So take that all with a grain of salt. That was just around the time what they were saying. There is an information though that this was apparently, Tomlinson that was talking about this. He said that Diana's death mimicked the death of Slobodan Milosevic, who was the president of Serbia, and apparently there was all this kind of kind of with the crash and everything, that they said that it might, some kind of flash was used in order to kind of blind the driver, which led to the accident.
Well, that could have just been regular. I apologize. Go ahead.
Did anyone see the flash?
So I will talk about that later. There's which.
Sorry about that.
My favorite names and stuff are coming up soon that y'all will be very excited for me to hear. And I'm going to say every single one of them right. Y'all are going to be so great.
My statement on the flash would have been. Now this was, I believe the accident was at night or in the evening.
Yes.
So if you're in a tunnel, any flash at all is going to be much more magnified.
Yes, and so people were they were saying, oh, it might have been the neon lights. Oh, it might have been the paparazzi. It might have, all this kind of stuff.
That would be my thought. It would be the paparazzi, or that a bulb in the tunnel had blown.
Yes, which I need to see. I needed to actually look at maybe what the tunnel looked like. And I'll get into the camera work and stuff a little bit later.
Yes.
But there's Operation Paget or Paget. I don't know.
Paget.
It's not Baguette. Paget. There we go. It's not Baguette. I would say that. They missed an opportunity. They should have named it that. Let's see. But it was basically they got into that inquiry in order to investigate MI5 and MI6, or they were trying to invest Tomlinson's claims is what they were saying. So let me see here. I was trying to think. I think in report too, you can find it all online as well, and I'll access it a little bit more later. It's all kind of just claims that were never super substantiated and all that, so kind of hearsay, like we said. So the next one was that Diana was killed basically because of her relationship to Dodi Fayed. And Dodi Fayed actually, he was like an Egyptian, I think, filmmaker, and then his dad was a billionaire. Yes. So I mean, this is a man with some power.
Yes.
So I think around the time that she was out looking, out seen with him was just a few weeks before her death. Anyway.
Yes. So you mean they met shortly before this accident?
Yes. So before the accident became kind of involved, all that kind of stuff. So basically, in response to that, the Muhammad goes on to when they're investigating all this and doing these trying to either disprove or substantiate these claims, he goes. He gives a list of the people that he thinks are involved with the deaths of his son and everybody.
Pretty much every citizen.
So pretty much everybody, the staff at the Waffle House, the Waffle Day House, whatever, the McDonald's down the street, the janitor in the whatever. But he's so that's MI5, MI6, the CIA, the Directorate General for the External Security, the French Intelligence Service, the French Ambulance Service, Lord Condon, Lord Stevens, Mr. It's just all these kind of things. And he's just they're definitely, I think is what he said.
Everyone.
He accused everybody. So it's just, just saying that everything had to, and that's a very bold thing to say because everything would have had to fall in the exact same place. And, just to me, at the same time, and this is just, I'm not an expert in anything. It's just that's just a lot to go through. I feel like if they wanted to take someone out, it would be a lot harder to do it in a way with a traffic accident versus I don't know, not harder, but it's just I feel like they could have just hired somebody or something.
No, you could do it very easily using a traffic accident as a cover. The problem with it is she was being chased by the paparazzi. Mm-hmm. So they would have to have timed it so perfectly in that situation to have been able to avoid camera work.
And that's just very hard to prove, I feel like.
Yeah, in my opinion, if they had wanted it to be an accident, they would have done something a little bit more noticeable, like the car ends up consumed in fire.
Yes, or something
to
like
hide
that.
all evidence.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Because you would
gosh.
Because you can't guarantee that someone's going to die from a car accident.
Yes.
Like, she didn't die from the impact. She
No.
died
So
on
at the
table.
hospital.
So if you're going to do a hit on someone, they're dead at the scene.
Yeah.
And then you get rid of the evidence.
Yeah.
So the only way to do that would be to have the accident, take out the target, and then destroy the evidence.
Yes, and I
So
feel
there would
like
be
you're right.
so there would be other things. It wouldn't just be like, oh, she was in an accident and she was fine for a long time after.
Yeah.
So
So I will say, that being aside, he made the assertion, Al-Fayed did, that in certain television interviews that the couple was going to announce an engagement the Monday after the crash. Was
very unlikely.
So very unlikely, and I felt there were some stuff going into that being like, that's a big deal. She's still a very high public figure. That would be something that would probably take a lot of preparation for.
And as you said, they weren't together very long.
Not together very long. All that kind of stuff, and a lot of the things. There's Lady Sarah McCorkadale. I'm going to say that. That sounds good enough. It sounds like a cookie. Let's see. McCorkadale. I love that. So it's just saying it says Diana spoke about Dodi Fayed in a manner that gave her sister the impression the relationship was on stony ground, was what she said. And this was all apparently in a phone conversation, I think, with Diana. So alleged, it's what she said. You can take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
And then let's see here.
There were also claims about, I believe,
what?
There was claims about Diana being pregnant with
that's
child,
right. That's very right.
Which again, I add, they were not together very long.
Yes.
She was a grown woman who knew how to have kids.
Yep.
She had 2 of them already.
Yes.
I find it very unlikely she would have put herself in a position where she would have been knocked up by some dude she just recently started dating before she was married and caused even more of a drama.
And
scandal.
That's just more scandal.
I'm not going to say she wouldn't have been okay with scandal because, again, we say she wasn't down for tradition. But I find it very unlikely that a woman that was so involved with her children
Right.
would have put her children in a situation where they'd have to deal with being harassed over having an illegitimate sibling.
Yeah. Apparently her friend, Annabelle Goldsmith, who was kind of in the thing too, said that apparently Diana told her that she needs marriage, like, I need a rash on my face, is what Diana said.
So that is definitely not someone who's ready for marriage.
Well, and
not rushing to the altar.
And not rushing to the altar, but we were talking about, too, before she had apparently had a Muslim heart surgeon named Hasnat Khan, who was apparently the love of her life, is what I think allegedly is what people knew him as. And, she had just gotten over that relationship, so I'm sure she's not willing to just throw away everything, and she's probably dealing with some stuff.
She wants to live her life for a minute. Yeah.
So the next one I'll talk about, like you said, Thomas, was the idea of the possible pregnancy. So Diana's body was apparently examined at the Fulham mortuary by Dr. John Burton. He did not find any traces of like a fetus or anything when he examined her, or anything like in her womb, is what they said in the actual document. But it said we found no traces of the HCG hormone, which is what you use whenever you do the pregnancy test.
Yes.
I believe this goes back. Also, this probably goes back to the claims that she's pregnant with an Egyptian, Egyptian Muslims baby. Is one of those alleged like it was a problem with.
We do know that her mother was not a fan of Khan.
Yeah.
Because he was Muslim.
Yeah.
But during that time, she hadn't spoken to her mother for months.
So she probably
had actually established a close relationship with her stepmother. So
that, I just really don't. And apparently, too, whenever this goes back, like whenever she was in that relationship with Khan, some like people of the royal family had given their approval for that, relationship. So, I mean, I take it with a grain of salt with that, too. I think another assertion was that they had gone to a villa that was owned, I think, by Al-Fayed to choose a room for their new baby they were going to have. And apparently this was just unsubstantiated by Reuben Morel, who was a security guard at the villa, who said that that's not true. Like he was like, I feel bad for like lying about that. Like that's not like apparently true at all. Yeah. So that was the big thing. So I'm reading closer to the end. Like I'll talk about like the Operation how would you pronounce it? Paget. I like Paget better. I feel like that sounds good. So that is a report that you can access online, which is I kind of went. Its whole purpose was to liaise with the French authorities in relation to the deaths of the Princess of Wales and Dodi Fayed, and in doing so identify any investigative opportunities that the coroner may wish to address. So it's probably just a way to for the people to have some closure.
Cross their T's and dot their
Yeah.
I's and put an end to it.
People to have their closure so they could not be under scrutiny anymore, whatever. So that was kind of what they were doing. And so one of the big things was, well, why didn't the cameras ever, catch anything, was what the thing, because I don't think there's any actual photo. There might be a photograph allegedly of going into the, her going into the bridge, but never an actual photograph or video of when the crash happened. So, there's people that they think did it. They haven't really ever substantiated it. It's all hearsay. So it's just saying that, it did say that approximately 10 video cameras are maintained by the city of Paris on the route taken by the Mercedes into the tunnel. There are no recordings from these cameras in the night in question. There's no explanation that has been forthcoming for that. But they do say that a lot of some of the cameras were principally security cameras that were facing entrances to buildings. So it wasn't necessarily cameras that
Watching
were facing the
tunnel,
street.
yeah.
So, and that's the thing. I'm sure, no one went into that. I just really don't, in my opinion,
I will say this. This is a conspiracy theory from me, personally.
Uh-huh.
My thought would be, this is the only thing that I would blame on the royal family, is that they might have requested that the footage of that be lost.
Yes.
Because they wouldn't want the media showing Diana's death. Or
And,
showing
true,
Diana's
and that
accident.
goes into it,
Yeah, and
If it doesn't show anything
Yeah.
conclusive, I could see them asking that people be kept from it, because how easy is it for the media to play on repeat the horrible things we see in day-to-day life?
Well, true. And also, you don't, we do this with our police officers as well. And sorry, Miss Rhonda, I know I've interrupted you, but I don't know, with police, they kind of keep some things close to their belt because they don't want to give away evidence that they have
Yes.
that can, somebody else can come forward
Yes.
and say, I was the one, and just dampen the investigation. But what were you going to say?
Yeah, and I can understand where you're coming from with that, as far as you don't want that kind of information out there, because then if you do find someone who has maybe who could be a possible suspect, then you don't want it out there in the general public, because nobody else should know it, and you can question that suspect and they might repeat it, and they would be the only person who had that knowledge, plus the police. So yeah, I could see that.
Exactly.
But as I recall, there were pictures taken as she was in the car.
Okay.
Oh, maybe I did. Maybe I just didn't come across those.
I believe so. Or maybe that was just a rumor. But
That's right. The paparazzi.
Yeah.
They were there.
Yeah,
Because
they were there, and they supposedly there are pictures out there, whether or not they've ever been released. But I think that was it. They were suppressed, or maybe not suppressed is a good word, but after what happened and the possible role the paparazzi had in it, they were not published.
Yeah.
And they may still be out there. They may have been published since then, because we're talking
24 years.
Yeah, 24 years.
Well, and
ago.
also, you got to think. I think I was in more so the crash itself. It might have been crashes like a picture of her leaving the Ritz, or stuff like that, but not of actually the crash. I think maybe post the crash. They think, or
post crash.
post crash. So that's
Yes.
So okay. So I think that there
After
were crashes. With that. The Paris Urban Traffic Unit basically also said that there was a trafficking monitoring camera above the underpass of the tunnel, but it was 11 p.m. and nobody was there, and nobody was doing a camera thing.
Gotcha.
Like that. So that was one of the things. So there are two suspects they have. Let me see. I think it was there was a white Fiat Uno car that they were looking for that left traces of its paint onto the Mercedes bodywork. So there were two. Mohammed Al-Fayed said that it was a man under the name of Jean-Paul James Anderson, who ended up committing suicide years later.
Oh, wow.
So it was his official verdict was suicide, but they thought it was things for his personal life, nothing like the guilt for this or anything like that. But I think he ended up, it was just attributed to problems in his private life.
Yeah.
But here we go, Thomas. Levantine, I can't even pronounce it, but you can look him up. It's Levan and then Thanh. It's all individual, so the Le is spaced and then Van space and then that. So just letting you know, I'm not, like I said, I'm not an expert in any kind of French or anything like that, and I don't claim to be, so don't come for me when I can't pronounce these names. So apparently this man owned a white Fiat Uno, and said that he ended up painting it hours after this crash, and was like, oh, we need to paint it. Woke his family up to help him paint it.
Oh my gosh,
and
that
he
sounds
said,
suspicious.
oh, it sounds suspicious. And then they say, oh, he was at work that night, but it actually ended up that he left work early that night and could have been at the scene of the crime, allegedly. So, to me, he sounds like a little bit better of a suspect, I suppose. But again, there's not really he's never done interviews, I don't think, or anything like that. So the last couple things I'll talk about is there's a few paparazzi and everything that said, that as it goes to the flash used to kind of maybe disorient the driver into crashing.
Yes.
Or Henri into crashing. Some would, there's paparazzi by Serge, whatever he wants to go by that day. So he doesn't remember a flash going off. There was one that says that he saw a camera flash. His name was David Odekirchen. Clifford.
So these are members of the paparazzi that were chasing the car?
So this was in the official office, like that, I can't say it. Paget. I'm going to say Paget one of these days. But it was just saying that, it was just trying to, like, everyone that was at the scene of the crash
was investigated.
Is what they're trying to propose.
Yes.
So, but yeah, and the last thing, I'll kind of give you a timeline, just to kind of close it and everything, just because I want to bring it back to Diana at the end of the podcast, and she was a living legacy and all that, just so much charity work, was a good mother, I feel like a good head on her shoulders, but probably suffered from some mental health issues.
Yes.
And completely normal, and she was in the public scrutiny the whole time, and that's just... It's important to know that, at that time, like whenever she, was in the accident, that she, they arrived at around 12:30 a.m., ended up taking her, I think that they had another ambulance that went up to around 12:40 a.m. that came. She was removed from the car by 1. That's when she was in the back of the ambulance, I think, went into cardiac arrest. Then they had to go into the ambulance again at 1:18 a.m., they departed the crash scene at 1:41 a.m. and arrived at the hospital at 2:06 a.m. So I'm not even going to try to pronounce this one.
Will, before he hits play, this is the name of the hospital. And the reason he is doing this is because, as I just said, we were discussing the pronunciation of French words, and he found a website that was supposedly...
This is like a very reputable... howtopronounce.com. It is the definitive... If you need a word...
So he's going to play how this website says you should pronounce this word.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you ready? Here we go.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Y'all ready? Here we go. Get away. Here we go. Girl, that is not how you say that.
Well, that might be how you say it, but there was a very thick Southern-sounding accent.
I'm like, that is my cousin Judy that got up that day for a $5 bill and a pizza. That is like, they paid her nickels for that.
Yeah, that wasn't very helpful because whenever I heard that the first time, I thought
Rhonda was laughing.
You work at the Pig, and I need to see how many teeth you have.
I'm like, golly, man. But it's so funny to me because it's like, she got up that day and she sounded like a mouthful of marbles. I'm like, girl, spit those marbles. Malpatrie. I could do better than that.
Petit Salpêtrière.
Listen, whatever it wants to be, it could be hop, skip, and jump hotel, whatever it wants to be, or hospital, whatever it needs to be. But I just know that I really did try to.
He was looking up the pronunciation for all these words, and some of them were giving him a lot of difficulty. He did not go over several of the ones that had us behaving like children.
Yes, absolutely. Rolling to the floor.
Like, we were laughing so hard, y'all. I wish we could have recorded that.
I had to walk away. I walked away. So with that, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please check out our Twitter and Instagram and share with your friends. Get the word out. Let people hear about it.
Yep.
And that way we can do more interesting things. Also, if you come up with things you want us to go over, what our topics should be, we've got a few on the list right now. But if you could come up with things and post it on our Twitter or our Instagram. Direct message us on Instagram.
I feel like they could leave a review on Apple Podcasts because I think that there is an opening to do that if they wanted to have
I just haven't found one, but I don't use podcasts that often.
Apple Podcasts is good.
If I'm listening to a podcast, I'm usually in the car with you.
Yeah, true. So that's where I do it from.
But with that, thank you guys so much. And it's so awesome that we are over 100 downloads now. And we're enjoying this. We really are.
I am too. Rhonda, what do you think about all this?
I've been enjoying it too. I mean, this is something I look forward to. It's therapeutic.
It is therapeutic. We were talking about, our jobs are kind of high stress a lot of the time, and it's just nice to have something that we can go and tell a story and try to, have fun with it. So I like that.
Yep, I agree. Look forward to it.
I do too.
So with that, thank you, and catch us next time.
All right, guys. See you guys.
Bye.